Here's a concept for you. Instead of buying the best speaker or the speaker that's right for you, what about buying a speaker that's right for your room, which will therefore be right for you as well because your mixers will translate better? Hi, I'm Thorne, a mixing and mastering engineer in London. It's good to see you. I've been on a speaker journey from the THOMANN KH120s to the PSI A23s, but over the last 18 months, I have learned two very significant lessons. Firstly, the speaker you want the most, or the one you've been told is the best, is not necessarily the right speaker for you, and it's not necessarily the right speaker for your room. Secondly, the single most fundamentally important element of any speaker is mix translation outside of your studio. The relationship between your speakers, your room, and mix translation is inextricably linked. Now, the PSIs sound amazing in my room, but what I hear in the studio on them is not what I hear outside on other systems. And if a speaker doesn't translate, it's redundant. So, I spoke to Dale at SX Pro Audio about replacing them, and he brought down the Amphion Two18s and the Ex Machina Pulsars to audition. Now, I had my mind set on the Ex Machina Pulsars, having heard them already, to pair with my Amphion 115s, but things didn't quite go to plan. First, we tried the Pulsars, which have a coaxial mid-driver and tweeter array and a similar-sized woofer to the PSIs. These sound immense and are flat down to 30 Hz, which coming at you off the desk is very impressive. However, they measured almost identically to the PSIs, pretty badly. The Amphions immediately measured considerably better, to the point I thought Dale had cheated and had measured a different room. I was genuinely left quite speechless, which, as you can imagine for a YouTuber and a podcaster, is quite rare. So let's unpack the measurements and explore the attributes of the Amphion Two18s that led to a significantly better speaker performance in a compromised room. Now, please don't consider this video a direct comparison. It's not. These speakers are very different beasts and excel in their own ways, but hopefully this explains why the Amphions are right for my room and maybe for your room too. Ported speakers like the PSIs are designed to enhance a speaker's performance by extending the low end by introducing harmonic content related to the cabinet's natural resonance. This results in a rich low end and the speakers sound great, but this design introduces two problems. Firstly, the harmonic content was deceiving my perception of the low end and it wasn't translating outside of the studio. My mixers were sounding anemic despite however much I tried to compensate for this. And secondly, the amount of low-end energy the speakers produce in my relatively small studio was causing problems. The large frequency peaks, like the 45 to 50 Hz boost you can see in my room measurement, can easily be attenuated, but as you know, you can't EQ out a null like the one at 90 to 100 Hz. Trinov does some wonderful phase and time alignment wizardry, factoring in SBIR calculations to minimize the nulling, but as with all things audio, this comes at a cost, and at times this was audible, especially at this extreme level of nulling. The best solution, it turned out, was to reduce the low-end energy in the room by reducing the size of the drivers delivering the sound. The Amphion Two18s host two 6.5-inch aluminium SEAS drivers and are in contrast quite flat in the low end, whilst extending down to 39 Hz. As you can see, the null at 90 to 100 is still present but significantly reduced. This means Trinov has to do less work and not load the speaker with as much additional amplitude and phase shifting to alleviate the null. The additional amplitude required in the PSIs to combat the more extreme null compounded the harmonic content already present and was audible, and my suspicions of being able to hear this were measured and corroborated in ruse. The auxiliary bass radiators, also known as passive radiators on the Amphions, aid the speaker's efficiency while adding a sympathetic resonance that reverses the phase of the rear output of the driver, extending the low frequency bandwidth. The passive radiators let the cabinet breathe without introducing harmonic content, instead delivering a more controlled, predictable, and clean low end much more amenable to accurate mix translation. This also results in a consistent frequency response at all volumes, something you can't say about ported speakers. As you can see, the PSIs deliver quite a turbulent frequency response in the mid-range, where the Amphions measure drastically less so. This is partly due to the Amphion MTM format, or mid-tweeter, mid-speaker array. The Amphion woofers are spaced at even distance apart from the tweeter, creating a geometrically symmetrical array. Note the Amphions are a two-way speaker and not a three-way speaker. Both woofers produce identical frequency content and are very energy efficient in the process by splitting the workload. This results in a low distortion drive unit and, again, better translation. The Amphions also host a 1-inch titanium tweeter recessed into the cabinet housed in the apex of a SEAS manufactured Corian waveguide. This point source performance does two things. It maximizes horizontal dispersion for a strong phantom center and wide stereo image, whilst naturally time aligning the tweeter signal and the woofer signal to arrive at your ears at the same time and, crucially, in phase. This is a similar concept to the coaxial design of the Ex Machinas when firing the mid and high frequencies from the same position, maximizing phase coherence. The importance of accurate phase cannot be stressed enough. This is integral to the speaker's accuracy, phantom center, stereo imaging, depth, and recreation of transient details such as transient peaks and reverb tails. The MTM format also alleviates desk reflections and off vertical axis comb filtering and localized SBIR issues, further reducing external influences on your sound at your listening position. Now, there is, however, a compromise with the MTM format. Although on a narrower than usual horizontal plane, moving from side to side, you get a very natural, accurate sound with wide dispersion. When you move up and down on the vertical plane, the sound does change. So if you're looking for a speaker that's going to impress your clients wandering around at the back of the room, standing up or seated, you may want a speaker that will disperse more widely in the vertical plane, and you may be looking at a three-way speaker for this. The PSIs disperse very broadly in all directions. This is a benefit of the three-way system, as I said. However, as a result, they are also heavily influenced by the sound of the room. If, like me, you have a difficult room, I can't recommend the Amphions enough. The MTM speaker format in general seems to be significantly less influenced by room acoustics. The Amphion Two18s have a crossover set at 1600 Hz, which is noticeably lower than most other speakers, which usually operate in the 3 to 3.5 kHz region. The benefit of this is that the human hearing is most sensitive between 2 and 5 kHz, so putting a crossover in the middle of that frequency range doesn't necessarily make sense, but can cause a buildup of frequency content as well. The point source nature of the MTM design makes the crossover point inaudible, and the lower crossover point lends itself to having a more even frequency spread with a very natural and balanced mid-range. Whilst the PSIs extend up to 23 kHz and deliver one of the most expansive top ends I've ever heard, the Amphions do go up to 20 kHz, but they don't lack anything. They have their own very unique way of highlighting where you need to roll off, and since using them, I've really been embracing low-pass filters. It's become pretty standard for me to low pass with a 24 dB per octave shelf at 24 kHz for mastering, and on vocals about 14 to 15 kHz. Both processors do something to remove the clutter in the upper frequencies to help vocals and mixers sit just right, and again, you guessed it, translate. The Amphion Two18s are a fully passive speaker which requires an amplifier. The benefit of this design is that there is space for the passive radiators to the rear of the speaker. Active speakers are filled up with electronics and the amplifier at the back, so there's not always space for these, certainly not in the considered orientation of the Amphions. Most active speakers incorporate DSP to equalize the speakers for optimal performance. This requires an additional stage of A to D and D to A conversion to your signal path, which can potentially limit headroom and introduce latency. Speakers that incorporate DSP also tend to lend themselves towards additional features like EQ shelving and filtering for broadband tuning, all of which require sophisticated electronics and additional components costing more money. If you're using a high-end speaker like the Amphions, you'll probably be using a designated professional room correction software of some kind, possibly such as Trinov. This will do a better job than a one-size-fits-all EQ and desk reflection filter. So the Amphions sit at an interesting price point, indicative of their quality, whilst cost-saving on potentially unnecessary features. As mentioned, the Amphions are all passive, so require an external amplifier, and the proprietary Amp 700 is currently the flagship amplifier from Amphion for these speakers. It's a 2U box delivering 700 watts of power into 4 ohms, connected via an Amphion cable. Having a separate amplifier also means if it does fail, you won't need to send the whole speaker off for repair if you have a backup amplifier. Amphions are not what I would describe as an immediately impressive speaker. If you want a hyped speaker that's going to impress clients and make everything sound incredible, you may be looking for something else, possibly a 3-way. But if you want a speaker that is honest and transparent, one that effortlessly guides you to making accurate mix decisions quickly, Amphions are the one. These speakers just translate beautifully. As I've discussed on this channel, and as Paul Third and I have discussed at length on the Working Audio Tools podcast, mixing is about accurate and consistent device translation. Now, I'm going to say this on the record, the Amphion 218s are my speaker for life. They are not going anywhere. I just love working on them. On that blonde bombshell, it's been emotional and it's time to finish this video. Subscribe and stay tuned for my Head Type 20 review coming next, with a review of the Tantrum Angry boxes to follow. A big thank you to Dale at SX Pro for helping me choose the right set of speakers finally, and to Amphion for producing such a wonderful product. I've been Ed Thorne. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.